Hello everyone, welcome to episode 15 of Dollar Dialogue. Today we're here to talk about a very interesting episode, a very interesting topic with another very interesting guest speaker. Our topic of discussion today is BRICS versus G7, competing economic models and global influence. Today's guest speaker is Mr. Yago Tzwicinski. Mr. Yago is a senior at Colegio Jesus Maria Jose School in Franca, Sao Paulo, Brazil. He's a very talented and dedicated, hardworking student, and he's very interested in economics, in political affairs, and he has attended various summer programs which highlight his dedication to the field of economics and politics. And he's just a very hardworking, intelligent, and knowledgeable student in general. He's one of the most interested person in the fields of global affairs, in the fields of politics. And as our topic of discussion is today is about BRICS, which Brazil is a member of, and since he's from Brazil, he would be invaluable to our discussion today. Again, thank you, Mr. Yago Tzwicinski, for coming into our episode today. Is there anything that you would like to add to the introduction that I just said?
By now, I have nothing to say, but I would like to thank you a lot for inviting me to your podcast, which is a very big opportunity for me, and for presenting my ideas and opinions about this topic, which is very, very, very important for my country. And thank you, guys.
Thank you, Yago, for the introduction. Now let's get into our topic of discussion. Again, as I've said, today's episode is episode 15, BRICS versus G7, competing economic models and global influence. Now let's first talk about BRICS and G7 a little bit before we dive into their comparative analysis, because I think it's very important to give our audience a brief knowledge or a brief understanding of what BRICS and G7 are. So BRICS is an acronym for an association of five major emerging countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. For initially, the group was known as BRIC without South Africa and was officially formed in 2006. South Africa joined in 2010, completing the current BRICS bloc. BRICS countries collectively account for 40% of the world's population. They covered approximately 26% of the world's land area with diverse geographical features and significant natural resources. As per GDP contribution, as of 2024, BRICS contribute to around 26% of global GDP nominal and 32% of global GDP PPP, making it a significant player in the global economy. Economic growth. These countries are also known for their rapid economic growth, with China and India being two of the fastest growing major economies globally. Additionally, BRICS conducts annual summits to discuss and coordinate on various issues, including economic cooperation, political alignment, and social development. Now let's talk about the BRICS nation one by one. The first BRICS nation that we would like to talk about, and the BRICS nation that is probably the best at football in the world, is Brazil. So Brazil has the largest economy in South America and is known for its vast agricultural, mining, manufacturing, and service sectors. It has a GDP nominal of around $2.1 trillion, and its key industries include coffee, soybeans, sugar, mining, different resources such as iron ore, energy, oil, and ethanol. And some of the major challenges that Brazil faces today is economic inequality, corruption, and political instability. As per the natural resources, it is rich in biodiversity and natural resources, including the Amazon rainforest and significant mineral deposits. The next BRICS country that I would like to talk about is Russia. Russia is a major exporter of oil and natural gas, making its economy heavily reliant on energy exports. It has a GDP nominal of around $1.8 trillion, and its key industry include energy, oil and gas, mining, defense, and technology. And some of its major challenges include sanctions that has been imposed by the Western nations such as the US and Europe, geopolitical tensions, and economic diversification. And it has also a lot of natural resources, including oil, natural gas, coal, and precious metals. The next economy that I would like to talk about is India. India is obviously a diverse economy with agriculture, manufacturing, and services sector contributing significantly to GDP. It has a GDP nominal of around $3.5 trillion. It has key industries including informative technology, telecommunications, textiles, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals. And some of the challenges that it faces to include poverty, infrastructure development, and education. And as per the demographics, with a population exceeding 1.4 billion people, India is expected to surpass China as the most populous country. And this is old statistics data. India is now the most populous country in the world. Next BRICS country that I would like to talk about is China. China is the world's second largest economy and the largest exporter of goods. And it has a GDP nominal of around $18.5 trillion. Its key industries include manufacturing, technology, finance, and real estate, and its major challenges include trade tensions, aging population, and environmental issues. And its economic model is known for its state-controlled capitalism with significant government intervention in key sectors. And the final BRICS country that I would like to talk about is South Africa. South Africa is the most industrialized country in Africa with a diverse economy that includes mining, manufacturing, and services. It has a GDP nominal of around $420 billion. Its key industries include mining, gold, platinum, diamonds, automotive, finance, and tourism, and its major challenges include unemployment, inequality, and political corruption. And it is also rich in natural resources such as mineral resources, particularly in precious metals. So, are there any information or any opinions that you would like to add to the information that I've just said? Yago, Shazib, Karim, or Ayub Malik?
I mean, Araf, just to add on to what you said a bit, you started off talking about the BRICS nations, and you start off with Brazil, right? So I think to talk a bit about Brazil, I'd say that Brazil is the largest economy in Latin America and one of the world's leading emerging markets. And its economic structure is diverse with significant contributions from agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and services. Brazil is known for its vast natural resources, including minerals, oil, and agricultural products such as soybeans, coffee, and sugar. And historically, Brazil's economy has seen periods of rapid growth driven by commodity exports and domestic consumption. However, it has also faced significant challenges, including inflation, political instability, and economic recessions. And despite these challenges, Brazil remains a critical player in the global economy. And if we now to just look at the Brazil's role in BRICS, I'd say that within BRICS, Brazil plays a pivotal role as the representative of Latin America. Its participation brings a unique perspective to the alliance, emphasizing the importance of emerging markets in global economic discussions. And Brazil has been an advocate for greater South-South cooperation, promoting economic partnerships and trade agreements among developing countries. And one of Brazil's key contributions to BRICS is its leadership in sustainable development and environmental issues. As home to the Amazon rainforest, Brazil has a vested interest in addressing climate change and promoting sustainable practices. And this focus aligns with BRICS' broader goals of fostering sustainable and inclusive growth. So now I'd like to pass it on to Yago to talk more about Brazil's role in the BRICS nations, because I'm sure he could provide us with the insightful information as he's from Brazil. So, Yago, would you like to add anything?
In a few words, it's basically all that you said, because like we are a leading economy, especially in agriculture, and a big economy worldwide because like we are emergent. And we have like a lot of influence here also in Latin America, since we have like a big exportation and leading in some exportations just like coffee and sugar, as you said before. And I think that also impacts a lot the BRICS and other countries because we have a lot of influence and also diplomacy influence worldwide, sorry. So that's another thing that I think is really important to add. And besides that, another thing that impacts a lot us, it's our corruptions and systems of corruptions here, because like many politicians kind of robs the money and doesn't help at all the economy, so that complicates a lot.
Thank you for all the opinions shared. Now let's talk about a little bit about the BRICS economic model. BRICS obviously has a diverse economy which consists of countries with diverse economic structures ranging from China's manufacturing giant to Russia's energy reliance. And these countries, which are obviously emerging countries, are characterized as emerging markets offering high growth potential but also facing significant unique challenges. And there's also state intervention. A common feature is a significant role of government intervention, economic planning, and intervention, especially in China and Russia. And BRICS nations emphasize innovation and technological development to boost economic growth and global competitiveness. They also aim to enhance inter-BRICS trade and investment, reducing dependency on Western markets and financial systems. And the infrastructure development model of the BRICS, which also focus on infrastructure projects to support economic growth and improve connectivity among member countries. And they also emphasize on sustainable development practices to balance economic growth with environmental protection. And the new development bank (NDB), also known as the BRICS Bank, was established to fund infrastructure and sustainable development projects within BRICS and other emerging nations. And it's headquartered in Shanghai, China, and it has an authorized capital of around $100 billion, and its primary objectives include finance infrastructure projects, support sustainable development, and foster greater financial cooperation among BRICS members. And the global influence of BRICS is diverse. Obviously, it includes the BRICS countries collectively wield significant political influence in international forums like United Nations, G20, and WTO, and is viewed as a counterbalance to Western dominated institutions like the IMF and World Bank, advocating for a more multipolar world order. And BRICS nations are also a major player in global trade, with China and India being key drivers of international commerce. And Russia's energy exports and Brazil's biofuel production play also a crucial role in shaping global energy markets. And the BRICS also emphasize cooperation among developing countries to address common challenges and promote mutual development. And BRICS also seek to enhance global financial stability by promoting alternative financial systems, including the use of local currencies in trade and investment. And it also encourages cultural exchange and tourism among member nations to strengthen people-to-people ties. And there's also collaboration on health issues, including joint efforts in vaccine cooperation distribution, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's also has been a focus on security cooperation, including counterterrorism efforts and cybersecurity collaboration. In addition to that, as of 2024, BRICS is considering expanding into its membership to include other emerging nations such as Indonesia, Turkey, Nigeria, and further enhancing its global influence. And then we have the recent developments, obviously, which is the BRICS Plus initiative, and which aims to expand the BRICS partnership by including other emerging countries and enhancing collaboration on global issues. And for this reason, the new BRICS members, which were added in 2024, in addition to Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. And there is also a digital economic cooperation on the BRICS platform. For example, they also focus on developing digital infrastructure, cybersecurity, and digital finance to harness the potential of the digital economy. And there has also been green energy initiatives where there have been joint efforts to promote renewable energy, reduce carbon emissions, and support sustainable development initiatives. And there also has been collaboration on vaccine research, production, and distribution to ensure equitable access, especially in developing countries. And there also has been negotiations to enhance trade relations among BRICS countries, focusing on reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers. And BRICS Education and Research Network also promotes academic collaboration, research, and innovation among member countries. And the media platform of the organization also is a platform for media cooperation and dialogue to enhance mutual understanding and counter information. So, are there any information that you would like to add, or any opinions that you would like to add to the information that I just shared? Arif Malik, Yago, or Shazib Karim?
Uh, yeah, Raf, I would like to talk about the currency development under BRICS regime. So currently, the U.S. dollar plays a pivotal role in the global economy because it is the dollar that most central banks in the world hold their foreign reserves in, and and dollar is also the currency that people use worldwide to trade. And one of the macroeconomic implications of BRICS that could that is essentially is it is challenging the global status of the dollar, because BRICS is, if I'm not mistaken, the countries in BRICS encompass 40% of the global world population, and like around 25% of the global GDP, right? So if so given the plan that BRICS wants to develop a new currency for BRICS members so that they can trade with each other, is one of the implications of BRICS that 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 is that it is going to challenge supremacy of the dollar. And on top of that, I would also like to talk about some of the other macroeconomic implications of BRICS, which is that BRICS also challenges the dominance of the traditional Western institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. So the group's collective bargaining power enables it to like push for reforms in the international financial institutions. And looking forward, like you mentioned, like new countries are going to join, new countries like Indonesia and other emerging economies and other countries from the N11 that JP Morgan and other banks have declared are also joining BRICS. So all of these expansionary policies of BRICS will definitely challenge the Western nations, especially the US, in terms of the dollar. So with that, I would like to ask Yago, who's from Brazil, and Brazil is also one of the countries in BRICS. So Yago, I would like to ask, like, would you say since joining BRICS, has Brazil experienced growth in economic factor, and would you say like BRICS is overall positive for the Brazilian economy?
Yeah, in my personal opinion, it is really a big importance for economy because like we have much more influence in other countries. Like talking about economics, and now talking about the currency that BRICS is planning to create a new one. I think it is really what you were saying because like we are going to make less dominant the Western countries and make more dominant the emerging countries. So like in my opinion, it's time for like the colonizers be less dominant in the world and the colonized countries be more dominant because like we were so like dominated and we lost so much resources in all those centuries of colonization and um, extraction. So like now it is time for us to change. So it is a really good thing for us and for Brazil because like we can help other emerging countries to grow and also develop their economies worldwide, and also end up with Western countries' economies like influence in others.
Yeah, and also to add my opinion, I think Araf, you were talking about the key features of the BRICS economic model, and I think just to add on to that, I'd say we can look at the diverse economic structures because the BRICS countries have varied economic structures ranging from resource-based economies to manufacturing powerhouses and service-driven markets. And this diversity allows for a wide range of collaborative opportunities and mutual benefits. And another point is the state-led development. So, in contrast to the largely market-driven economies of the G7, BRICS countries often feature significant state involvement in their economic planning and development. And this state-led approach can provide stability and direction, particularly in times of global economic uncertainty. Also, the focus on innovation and technology. BRICS nations are increasingly investing in innovation and technology to drive future growth, from China's advancements in artificial intelligence to India's burgeoning tech sector. Innovation is a critical component of their economic strategies. And the last point I want to talk about is the emphasis on South-South cooperation. BRICS advocates for greater cooperation among developing countries, often referred to as South-South cooperation. And this includes trade agreements, investment partnerships, and knowledge sharing initiatives that benefit the broader developing world. Yeah.
All right, now let's moving on. Now let's talk about some of the challenges that BRICS nation face. The first challenge is economic disparities, which is including significant economic disparities exist among BRICS members, with China and India having more substantial economies compared to others. And there's also a lot of political difference between the BRICS members, including diverse political systems and interests that may lead to disagreements and hinder collective decision making. and there's also global competition, including between the BRICS countries, because there are obviously emerging markets and geopolitical tensions with Western nations, and tariffs and non-tariffs within BRICS countries can impede intertrade group. And this also has been balancing economic growth with environmental sustainability and addressing climate impacts. And the political differences between BRICS member nations is obviously commonly known, such as that of China versus India. And the future prospects of BRICS obviously include economic growth, which is continued economic growth in BRICS nations is expected to drive global economic recovery and development. And this also has been investments in technology innovation, which will enhance competitiveness and support economic transformation. And as BRICS expand its membership and strengthens cooperation, its influence on global economic governance and policy making is likely to increase. And there also has been enhanced infrastructure connectivity among BRICS nation, which strengthens cooperation and its influence on the global economy. And this will obviously facilitate trade, investment, and cultural exchange. And BRICS aims to take a leading role in global sustainable development initiatives, focusing on renewable technology, climate change mitigation, and social equity. And the collective group represents a dynamic and influential coalition of emerging economies that are shaping the global economic landscape. With this diverse membership, robust economic growth, and strategic initiatives, BRICS continues to play a pivotal role in promoting a multipolar world order and addressing global climate challenges. And so, this is a very brief summary of the BRICS organization. So, are there any information or any opinions that you would like to add to the information that I've just said about the challenges before we move on to G7?
Yeah, sure, Araf. I can talk a bit about the challenges of the BRICS nations. So we can look at the internal economic instability as each BRICS country faces its own economic challenges, such as political instability, economic volatility, and social inequalities. And these issues can hinder collective progress and cooperation. And also, geopolitical tensions is also a challenge that we need to look at, as geopolitical tensions both within and outside the BRICS bloc can pose significant challenges. Conflicting national interests and external pressures can impact the cohesion and effectiveness of BRICS initiatives. So yeah, Arav.
All right, thank you, Shazia, for the opinions that have been shared. Now let's move on to G7. So G7 stands for the Group of Seven, and it's an organization of the world's seven advanced economies that coordinate on global economic policy. And its members include Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the United States. And it was formed in 1975 as the G6, with Canada joining in 1976, becoming the G7. And its primary goal is to address the economic challenges like the 1970s oil crisis and global recession through coordination and cooperation. And it has annual summits, such as the G7 holds annual summits where leaders of member countries discuss and develop strategies for major global issues. And collectively, the G7 nations account for nearly 45% of global GDP and over 58% of global net wealth, despite having only 10% of the global population. And the G7 countries are all democracies, emphasizing shared values of freedom, human rights, and rule of law. And so, the first G7 nation that I would like to talk about is Canada, which has a very highly developed mixed economy with strong ties to the US market and significant natural resources. And it has a GDP of around $2.1 trillion, and its key industries include energy, oil and gas, mining infrastructure, and technology. And its natural resources include vast reserves of oil, natural gas, timber, and minerals. And it also has trade relationships with the US, and it's a member of the United States Mexico Canada Agreement, USMCA. The next G7 nation is France. It has also a diverse and advanced economy with a strong focus on services, manufacturing, and agriculture. It has a GDP nominal of around $3 trillion, and its key industries include aerospace, automotive, luxury goods, agriculture, wine, and cheese. And it also follows a socialist model, and it's known for its welfare state and social security system. And it's a key member of the European Union, influencing EU policy and integration. And the next G7 member is Germany, which is the world's largest economy and global leader in industrial and technological sectors. It has a GDP of around $4.4 trillion, and its key industries include automotive engineering, chemicals, renewable energy. And it's also an export-oriented economy with strong export sector with significant trade surpluses. And it's a EU leadership which plays a pivotal role in Germany and EU's economic policy and governance. And the next G7 nation is Italy, which also has a diversified economy with a strong manufacturing base and vibrant cultural ties. It has a GDP nominal of around $2 trillion, and its key industries include fashion, automotive, manufacturing, machinery, food and beverages. And it also faces key challenges such as public debt and unemployment. And it is also a key member in EU economic and political affairs. The next G7 nation is Japan, which is the world's third largest economy, known for its technological innovation and industrial prowess. There's a GDP of around $5.2 trillion, and its key industries include electronics, automotive, robotics, and pharmaceuticals. And it has an aging population, and which is obviously a demographic challenge for the country. The next G7 nation is UK, which has a mixed economy with strengths in finances, services, and creative industries. It has a GDP nominal of around $3.2 trillion, and its key industries include finance, aerospace, pharmaceuticals, and creative industries. And the UK is obviously known for in terms of political affairs for its Brexit, which UK is obviously navigating economic changes post Brexit, focusing on new trade and agreements. And also has a Commonwealth. It's also the leader of the Commonwealth world, which maintains strong ties with Commonwealth nations. And the US also is the final G7 member, which has the largest economy in the world, driven by diverse industries and innovation. It has approximately $26.8 trillion as in terms of GDP, and its key industries include technology, finance, healthcare, defense, and entertainment. And it's a global leader, and it has significant influence in global economic policy and international organization. And it is also leading in technological advancement and research. And so now talking about, as for the G7 economic model, it is also free market economy, and G7 countries operate largely on free market model characterized by private enterprise and minimal government intervention in markets. It has also strong emphasis on innovation, research, and development across all sectors to maintain competitive advantages. And the economy of G7 countries are predominantly service-oriented, with financial services, technology, and healthcare as key contributors. And member countries of the G7 have some of the world's highest GDP per capita globally, indicating high standards of living and economic development. And its trade and investment, G7 obviously has extensive trade networks and investment in both developing and emerging countries. And it's also involved in multilateral trade agreements like the USMCA, EU agreements, and others to facilitate global trade. And as for the fiscal and monetary policies, the G7 nations have advanced fiscal and monetary policy aimed at stabilizing economy and fostering growth. And the central banks of the nations play a crucial role in managing monetary policy, such as the U.S. Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, and Bank of Japan. And they also have welfare systems, develop welfare social systems providing social security, healthcare, and education. Although the extent varies by countries, such as universal healthcare in the Canada and UK. And they also have sustainability goals, including commitment to sustainable development with policies promoting clean energy and climate action and environmental conservation. And they have initiatives to transition towards a green economy, reducing carbon footprints, and investing in renewable technology. And they also have a robust regulatory framework ensuring consumer protection, financial stability, and fair competition. And there has been financial regulations to prevent economic crises, like the Dodd-Frank Act in the US post 2008 financial crisis. So this is a very brief analysis of the G7. So are there any information or any opinions that you would like to add to the things that I've just said? Are you Malik, Yago, or Shazib Karim?
Yeah, sure, Araf. I think to start off, I'd um initially when you started talking about G7, you started off with Canada, right? So just to talk about Canada and Canada's role in the G7, I do know some information about Canada because my good friend Safras Chaudhry, he used to study in AIST. He now lives in Canada, so he's been living in Canada for a while. So he's told me, yeah, he's provided me with a bunch of useful information, so I can talk about Canada's role in the G7. So, um, within the G7, Canada plays a crucial role in several areas, such as the economic policy coordination, as Canada actively participates in coordinating economic policies among G7 nations, contributing to discussions on global economic stability, trade policies, and of financial regulation, and also advocate for free trade. As a strong proponent of free trade, Canada supports open markets and has been instrumental in negotiating trade agreements within and beyond the G7 framework, and also the environmental leadership. As Canada is known for its commitment to environmental sustainability and climate change initiatives, often advocating for green policies and renewable energy investments within the G7. Now, I can also give an overview and talk about G7 as a whole. So if we look at the key features of the G7 economic model as well, we see that it has market oriented economies, as the G7 countries largely follow market oriented economic principles, emphasizing free markets, open trade, and competition, and also the advanced infrastructure. These nations boast advanced infrastructure, including highly developed transportation networks, communication systems, and financial markets, and also the high per capita income. G7 countries have some of the highest per capita incomes in the world, reflecting their overall economic prosperity and standard of living. And lastly, I'd also like to talk about the innovation and technology. The G7 economies are leaders in innovation and technology, driving global advancements in sectors like healthcare, information technology, and renewable energy. And I'd say that these features combine to create dynamic, resilient economic economies capable of adapting to global economic shifts and challenges.
Yeah, I would also like to add to Shazib that like the G7 is basically the better version of BRICS, I would say at the moment, because in terms of GDP, if I'm not mistaken, the G7 encompasses around 40% of the global GDP, but the BRICS only compass 25% of the world GDP. So this shows that while G7 countries are relatively smaller in uh, in uh, in population and in land area as well compared to some of the countries in BRICS, it shows that G7 countries are more specialized in their trade and therefore have a higher GDP output and a higher output in individual income as well compared to the BRICS countries. And I would attribute this to two main reasons. The first reason that I would like to I would say is probably the reason why G7 is better than BRICS at the moment is because the G7 countries have a very good fiscal policy and a very good monetary policy. So there was an article in the New York Times by Christina Romer, and it's an article that I read a few days ago, and it talked about why fiscal policy and monetary policy are effective if they're used correctly. And if we look at the G7 countries, the fiscal policy and the monetary policy that they have implemented is very strong. Because let's look at Germany, for example. The German central bank, the German the, or the Deutschmark bank is one of the banks that has maintained inflation rate about 2% to 5% for almost like over a decade now. And it shows that the G7 countries are very good at like maintaining their fiscal policy. And like compared to, like, let's look at BRICS country, like Brazil, for example. Like for many years, like Brazil experienced high inflation in double digits for many years. So it shows that sometimes, like, even though Brazil is an emerging economy, there is institutional and systemic problems which is causing the double digit inflation in Brazil, and causing the Brazilian consumers to lose their purchasing power for what their money can buy. And the second reason that I would say is that why BRICS is currently worse than the G7 countries is because of the exchange rate volatility. Like if we look at like the South African rand that we talked about uh, with our previous guest speaker, and like let's look at, and we talked about like it's like depreciating against the US dollar. And also, like, let's look at Brazilian real, or and like compare these with the G7 currency. Like these currencies in the BRICS are very volatile, and and most in most cases they depreciate against the US dollar, which causes inflation. Like depreciation can be good for many of these importing countries, but there's also an inflation factor which reduces the purchasing power of the consumers. And also, like, and like China's currency is not not a floating currency. It's a fixed currency, so therefore there's a trust issue element related to the credibility of the Chinese yuan, for instance. And like overall, like the G7 countries have a floating exchange rate, which makes the currency much more transparent, and therefore the trade and investments are also much more investors have much more confidence because the currencies are floating, and therefore they can actually predict what's going to happen to the currency, as opposed to some of the fixed currencies that many of the BRICS member have. So therefore, I would like to ask Yago a question. So like, given the diverse macroeconomic landscape of the BRICS nation, what specific policy do you think BRICS needs to implement so that they can be on the same par as G7? Because as of right now, I think all of us can agree that G7 is better than BRICS. But what do you think BRICS should do to catch up to G7?
I think it's improving our politics, especially in Brazil, because like in Brazil and many others Latin American countries, we are like a pointer of a clock. Because like um, how can I explain this? Like in 4 years we are with leftist presidents, and like after 4 years we are like presidents that are more affiliated to the right, and like many presidents have many different thoughts about the BRICS and economic blocks and some and other things like that. So like that affects a lot of of our economy and of our policies, because like that also implements our corruption and inflation, because like not having any stable government and stable politicians in the head of the government impacts a lot of the politics and the reliability of our money and currency and economics. So I think that also impacts a lot.
So thank you for all the opinions that have been shared. Now let's talk about a little bit about the global influence of G7. And the G7 countries lead the global economy, setting standards and policies influencing worldwide financial economic practices. And they have political influence, including influence in international organizations like the United Nations, the IMF, World Bank, and WTO. And they also have diplomatic and political power in reshaping global governance and geopolitical strategies. And the G7 nations are home to major financial centers, including the New York, London, and Tokyo stock exchanges, including influencing financial markets and investments. And they have control over major currency reserves like the US dollar, euro, and Japanese yen. And they're also key players in international trade, accounting for a significant share of global imports and exports. And the trade policies and agreements significantly impact global supply chains and economic trends. And the G7 nations are also leaders in technological innovation and digital transformation, driving advancements in AI, biotech, and other cutting-edge fields. And they also have influence in global standards for technology, cybersecurity, and intellectual property. And the G7 nations also collaborate on security issues, counterterrorism, and defense strategies. And there are also all of the G7 nations are members of NATO except Japan, contributing to global peacekeeping and security efforts. And they're also promoters of climate action and environmental sustainability, setting ambitious targets for reducing emissions and promoting clean technology. And they're also participants in global initiatives like the Paris Agreement and COP summits. And they also play an active role in global health governance, including pandemic response, vaccine distribution, healthcare infrastructure support. And they also have support for WHO and other health organizations to address global health challenges. And they are also significant contributors to international aid, development projects, and humanitarian assistance. And they also have focus on poverty alleviation, education, and infrastructure development. In addition to that, the BRICS nation obviously face some challenges, such as rising geopolitical tensions with the major powers like China and Russia, impacting global stability and cooperation. And they also have internal challenges in the BRICS nation to economic disparities and income inequality within member nations, balance economic policies with global responsibilities. And the BRICS nation obviously are very resilient in their efforts, and the future prospects of the BRICS nation include expanding memberships, and they're also hoping to strengthen global influence through strategic alliance and multinational cooperation. And they have also committed to finding innovative challenges for pressing global issues, including technology, health, and sustainability. And in conclusion, the BRICS nation obviously are very influential in the world, as Arif has highlighted, and they also play a crucial, vital role in reshaping the global economic and political landscape through its collective influence. The G7 addresses pressing global challenges, promotes economic support, and advocates for democratic values and human rights. And despite criticism and challenges, the G7 continues to play a significant role in global governance, economic policy, and international cooperation. So, are there any information that I or Shazib or Yago that you would like to add, or any opinions that you would like to add to the things that I've just said? Shazib, I see your hand is raised. Yeah, you can speak.
Okay, Araf. So, basically, Araf, you provided us with some very insightful information. So, I completely agree with you, and I'd say it's very interesting. And I just wanted to ask a question, um, to like any of you guys can answer this. So, and my question to you guys is, that geopolitical tensions can impact G7 initiatives, and how do these tensions affect the group's ability to coordinate and implement policies? So, what do you guys think?
That's a very good question, Shazib. And I would say, one of the reasons why global geopolitical tensions isn't as much of a deterrent to G7 nations as opposed to BRICS nation is because the G the G7 nations have like a united perspective on on their issues and stands, and most of them follow like a Western ideology regarding democracy and freedom. But if we look at like G7 opposed to BRICS countries, for example, like India, China, they like even though they have a even though they're part of BRICS and are part of this trade agreement, politically and also regionally, these two have like these two countries sort of hate each other and have land disputes in the Kashmir region as well. But if we look at like G7 countries, most of these countries have a political system in which all of these countries are sort of allies with each other. But G7 countries are sort of the countries that are not allies by a choice, but they're allies because they're self-interested in our and prospering. So I would say that's one of the reasons why G7 countries experience less effect during geopolitical tensions as opposed to BRICS. I think Yago had his hand raised, but he's facing technical difficulties.
Oh, since Iago's not here, maybe I can add my personal opinion to the question. I know I asked this question, but I can also add my insights to this, and I'd say that geopolitical tensions can significantly impact the G7's ability to coordinate and implement policies, and each G7 member has its own national interests, which can sometimes be at odds with those of other members. For instance, economic policies, trade agreements, and foreign relations with non G7 countries can differ significantly, leading to disagreements on how to approach global issues. And historical rivalries and economic competition further complicate matters. For example, disputes over trade tariffs between the US and the EU have strained relations and hindered coordinated efforts in the past. Additionally, external pressures from countries like Russia and China can influence the G7's internal dynamics, as different members may have varying approaches to dealing with these external powers. And one clear example of how geopolitical tensions can affect G7 coordination is in climate change policy. While all G7 members recognize the importance of addressing climate change, their approaches and commitments can vary. Disagreements over financial contributions, emission reduction targets, and the role of fossil fuels can impede the formulation and implementation of cohesive climate policies. And I'd say that despite these challenges, the G7 employs mechanisms for diplomatic negotiation and compromise. Regular summits, ministerial meetings, and working groups provide platforms for dialogue and consensus building. Ultimately, while geopolitical tensions pose significant hurdles, the G7 continues to strive for coordinated policies by balancing national interests with collective goals. So yeah, Yago is back now, Arif, so he can add now.
Sure, I'm back. I was having some internet problems. So, like what you were saying about the environmental issues and environmental care for the G7, although I see many countries speaking that they like really care about the environment and they believe that the planet is getting like going to get extinct due to the global warming. I don't see many countries doing many contributions to the environmental cause. As for example, the United States, I don't see them like making many laws and protective rights to the environment, so that at the same time they have a lot of influence and they demand a lot of emerging countries for the environmental cause. They don't have like big examples to give them, so like it's a big pork right.
So thank you for sharing all the opinions. Now let's get talk about a little bit about the comparative analysis. Again, our podcast episode for today's episode 15: BRICS versus G7, competing economic models and global influence. As for the competing economic models for BRICS, it's obviously, as we have talked about a little bit before, focus on growth and development focus, and they are high emphasis on economic growth, industrialization, and infrastructure development. They have significant investment in key sectors like energy, technology, and agriculture, and there also has been economic diversification to reduce dependency on Western markets, and there also has been financial independence to create financial initiatives to create financial autonomy, such as the New Development Bank (NDB) and Contingent Reserve Arrangement (CRA). And there have been efforts to establish alternative financial systems like the BRICS payment system to reduce reliance on the US dollar. And the BRICS nation are also export-oriented economies, predominantly export-driven growth models, leveraging natural resources and manufacturing capabilities. And they focus on expanding trade networks with developing regions in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And they're also addressing poverty, inequality, and education through social programs and inclusive policies. And there also has been promotion of digital inclusion and sustainable development initiatives. And the BRICS nations are also are significantly state capitalist control economies, which have government intervention in key sectors and economies. And there has also been increasing investments in technology and innovation to drive future growth, and collaborative research and development initiatives among member nations to do that. And there has the BRICS nation obviously a diverse economic structure. For example, Brazil is an agriculture powerhouse and leading exporter of commodities, while Russia is a major supplier with vast natural resources, while India is a growing technology hub with a large consumer market, while China is a manufacturing giant and leading global exporter, and South Africa is rich in minerals and a gateway to African markets. As for the G7 free market capitalism, they have been strong emphasis on free market principles and open economics, and there has been promotion of competitive markets and private sector driven growth. And the G7 also are innovation driven economies with high investments in research, technology, and innovation, and they're leaders in sectors like such as finance, technology, and healthcare. They also have well established financial systems with global banking and financial services, and they have major influence over global financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. And they also promote free trade agreements and open markets, and advocate for reduction of trade barriers and protectionism. And they also have a social welfare system which includes a comprehensive social welfare system aimed at reducing inequality and supporting vulnerable populations, which emphasize on healthcare, education, and social safety nets. And the G7 nations are also strongly committed to environmental sustainability and climate change mitigation, and they're also leaders in promoting renewable energy and green technologies. And there also has been a high degree of economic integration and cooperation among member nations, and collective influence on global economic policies and governance. And the G7 nations are leading sectors in finance, technology, automotive, and pharmaceuticals, with innovation hubs, with advanced infrastructure and skilled workforce. This is the comparative analysis for the economic models versus of the G7 versus the BRICS nations. Are there any information or opinions that you would like to share that or add or share to the information that I just said? Shazib, Arif, or Yago? Yago, I see your hand raised. Would you like to add anything?
Oh yeah,
I
okay.
think
Yago can go. Yeah.
this is starting. You can go.
No, you had your hand raised, right? So you can go.
No, like you can really go first. I need to think first, like I was going to say.
Oh, okay, okay, sure. As Araf, you had said we are comparing the economic models of BRICS versus G7, right? So I'd say to we talked about the overview of both economic models and to look at the comparative analysis. I'd say if we look at the economic structure first, the BRICS is for like if you look at BRICS one side, which is highly diverse with economies ranging from resource rich, for example Russia, Brazil, to manufacturing powerhouses, for example China, and service driven like India, whereas G7 with advanced industrial and service sectors and a strong emphasis on technological innovation and also the government involvement. BRICS, if you look at BRICS, it has significant state involvement, particularly in China and Russia, where government controls key sectors and guides economic planning. Whereas G7 predominantly market oriented, with governments playing a regulatory and facilitative role rather than direct control over economic activities. And if we look at the growth dynamics, BRICS is more focused on rapid growth and development with significant room for economic expansion and industrialization, whereas G7 has mature economies with slower growth rates, focusing on innovation, efficiency, and maintaining high living standards. So we can also look at the challenges now. So BRICS faces challenges such as political instability, economic volatility, and social inequality, and the need for structural reforms. Whereas G7 deals with issues like economic inequality, aging populations, and geopolitical tensions that can impact coordination and policy implementation. So I'd say that in conclusion, in my opinion, while BRICS and G7 have distinct economic models, both play crucial roles in shaping the global economic landscape. BRICS focuses on rapid growth and creating alternatives to Western dominance, while G7 emphasizes innovation, free markets, and global leadership. Understanding these differences helps us appreciate the complexities and dynamics of global economics. So yeah, would any of you guys like to add anything else? That's my say in it.
Okay, so besides that, oh sorry. Okay, so I thought
No,
like we
it's,
were
it's
going
fine.
to.
Yago can go.
Okay, thank you. So, like, adding something to that, while we're talking about instability and politics and the problems that BRICS has, I agree with all of that. And, like, besides that, there's also internal conflicts based on religion and also on states that have, like, minorities that can, like, lead to revolutions and rebellions. So, like, that also inflicts a lot in the BRICS countries uh, stability. And also, besides that, I see a big pressure and fights between Russia and China when talking about economic agreements and alliance when they are in BRICS. So, like, also there's another thing to worry about because, like, even though they have a big influence and they are allies, they have like a lot of divergence when talking about economics and political talks.
So now let's talk about a little bit about the global influence of BRICS. The BRICS nation have a geopolitical, obviously a lot of influence. For example, they advocate for a multipolar world order with balanced power dynamics, and they challenge Western dominance in international institutions and decision-making processes, and they're also emerging markets, and they also have south-south cooperation which focus on fostering economic ties and cooperation with emerging markets and developing countries, and they also promote south-south trade and investment partnerships. The new development bank of BRICS was established to finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects in member countries and beyond, and they also offer an alternative to traditional financial institutions like the World Bank and IMF. and they obviously have a large, diverse range of cultures, political systems, and economic models, and advocate for cultural exchange and mutual respects among member nations. And the BRICS nation also are key players in global energy markets, influencing oil, gas, and commodity prices. And they emphasize on energy security and sustainable resource management. And there also has been increasing influence in global technology and innovation sectors by the BRICS nation. And they also participate in UN forums and global governance initiatives. And the BRICS nations are obviously all over the world, which is one of the reasons why they have strategic partnerships with regional organizations and countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. As for the G7, they're obviously economic powerhouses with significant influence on global markets and financial systems, and they're major contributors to global GDP and trade. They also have dominant role in shaping policies and decisions of what IMF, World Bank, and WTO, and they advocate for free trade, open market, and economic liberalization. They also are strongly committed to addressing climate change and promoting sustainability, and they're also key players in international diplomacy and conflict resolution and support for democratic values, human rights, and rule of law globally. They're also leaders in technology innovation and digital transformation, and they influence over global tech standards and cybersecurity policies. They are also key contributors to global health initiatives and pandemic response strategies, and they support for healthcare infrastructure and access to essential medicines worldwide. They are also strongly focused on global security and defense cooperation, and they actively participate in NATO and other international security alliances. And they promote cultural exchange and educational collaboration and influence over educational. They also heavily influence educational standards and research initiatives. So this is the brief analysis of the comparative analysis of between the BRICS and the G7 when it comes to global influence. Are there any opinions or any information that you would like to share to the information that I've just said? Arif, Shazib Karim, or Yago? Yes, Shazib, you have your hand raised. You can go and speak. Yago, I have a question. So, what do you think of the comparative analysis between BRICS and G7 when it comes to the economic models and global influence?
Okay, so since BRICS has a lot of more GDP and economics, I think it can have a lot of influence if they work together. But like by now, G7 is having much more influence because like they have much more stability and also United States on their lead. So due to that, I think they can control and influence much more other countries than the BRICS because they can press other countries to help them because like they helped them in the past or maybe track them with army forces so that can also influence a lot of countries. And even though the BRICS have a lot of GDP worldwide and a great percentage of economics in the world, they don't have like as much as the influence of the G7, you know.
Yeah, so to add more on to that, RF, you were talking about, you basically we're talking about the global influences that both the BRICS and G7 nations have. So I'd say too, like I'd like to talk about the economic influence first, and I'd say that for if you look at G7, we can look at the economic leadership where the G7 compromises some of the world's largest and most advanced economies, and their policies and decisions significantly impact global markets, trade, and financial stability. And also the financial institutions. G7 nations have a commanding influence over major international financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, and they set global economic standards and policies that shape international financial systems. And if you look at BRICS, BRICS have emerging economies as the BRICS countries represent some of the fastest growing economies in the world. Their rapid development contributes significantly to global economic and shifts economic power balances. And also, we can also look at the BRICS trade networks. BRICS nations focus on enhancing trade and investment among themselves and with other emerging economies, fostering economic interdependence and growth in the global south. And that's my take on the economic influence. And now we can also look at the political influence. So for G7, the global governance, the G7 plays a crucial role in shaping global governance structures, advocating for policies that promote democracy, human rights, and free markets. They influence major international organizations and forums. And also the geopolitical alliances. G7 countries often align with NATO and other Western alliances, promoting collective security and geopolitical stability. Whereas BRICS, their geopolitical balance, BRICS countries aim to balance Western influence by forming strategic alliances and engaging in diplomatic efforts that promote their interests and those of other developing countries. And also the global advocacy. BRICS nations collectively address global issues such as poverty, inequality, and sustainable development, often presenting alternative perspectives to those of the G7. So, the final influence that I'll be talking about is gonna be the cultural influence. So, G7, for them, the cultural exports. G7 countries are leading exporters of cultural products, including films, music, literature, and fashion. These exports shape global cultural trends and preferences. And the cultural influence of G7 nations, particularly through media and entertainment, enhances their soft power, promoting their values and lifestyles worldwide. Whereas BRICS, and they have cultural diversity, as BRICS countries showcase a rich cultural diversity with unique traditions, languages, and artistic expressions. And this diversity enriches global cultural landscapes. And also the BRICS cultural initiatives. Initiatives like the BRICS Film Festival promote cultural exchanges and mutual understanding among membering countries, strengthening their cultural ties and global cultural impact.
So I believe that brings to the end of our discussion for today. In conclusion, BRICS and G7 represent two distinct groups with different economic models, geopolitical strategies, and global influence. BRICS focus on emerging markets, regional integration, and sustainable development, and challenging Western dominance and advocating for a multipolar world order, while G7 emphasizes free market capitalism, innovation, and democratic values, maintaining significant global influence and leadership in economic and technological domains. The competition between BRICS and G7 reflects broader shifts in global power dynamics, with both groups playing critical roles in shaping the future of international relations, economic policies, and global governance. So that's basically the end conclusion that I can derive from our discussion today. Is that a conclusion that Shazib, Arif Malik, and Yago, that you all agree with?
Yeah, I would agree with that conclusion, Araf.
Yeah, me too.
What about Arif? Do you agree with the conclusion?
Yeah, I think he also agrees with that. I think his connection is a little bit bad, but he wrote in the chat that he also agrees with it.
Oh, okay. I can see the chat right now. Thank you for all the discussion that has been shared today. Yes, I believe that conclusion sums up our discussion today, which is that the competition between BRICS and G7 reflects broader shifts in global power dynamics, with both groups playing critical roles in shaping the future of international relations, economic policies, and global governance. So that's the end of our episode for today, which was episode 15, BRICS versus G7, competing economic models and global influence. I would like to thank Yago Tzwicinski for coming into our episode today and sharing his invaluable opinions. Yago, are there any final words that you would like to say before we leave for today?
Thank you guys for inviting me and for the great conversation. It was a pleasure meeting you guys and having this great conversation with you all.
Thank you, Yago, for coming into today's episode. Again, that's the end of our episode for today, which is episode 15, BRICS versus G7, competing economic models and global influence. And that's the end of the episode for today. And thank you for the audience for listening. And we hope to see you next week. We will have another very interesting topic with another very interesting guest speaker. Thank you, and we hope to see you next week. Goodbye for now.